The observatory was a vortex of destruction. The wind, howling through the shattered glass wall, carried daggers of violet ice that slashed at the tapestries and the maps scattered on the floor. Kaelen covered Elara with his body, his leather armor taking the brunt of the shards. The cold was instantaneous and brutal, a flash freeze that stiffened his wet clothes. The architect was on his knees, wailing, not for his own life, but for the tank in the corner. The amber fluid was freezing, turning cloudy, obscuring the face of the dead woman inside. "No!" the architect screamed, scrambling toward the tank. "Not her! Take the world, but not her!" Kaelen grabbed the old man by the collar of his robes and hauled him back just as a massive stalactite of violet ice crashed down, pulverizing the floor where he had been standing. The tower groaned, a deep, structural scream of metal twisting under immense pressure. "She's gone!" Kaelen roared over the wind, shaking the architect. "Focus! You said the girl is the key. Key to what?" The architect looked at Kaelen, his eyes wild and mismatched, one blue, one mechanical gold. Sanity flickered back into his gaze, fueled by desperation. "The heart," he gasped, "the clockwork heart in the basement. It amplifies resonance. If she sings the countertone, we can shatter the crystal from the inside." Kaelen looked at the door. The violet ice was growing across the floor like a fast-moving mold, devouring the wood. They had seconds. "Lead the way," Kaelen said, "and if you try to sacrifice her, I will kill you before the ice does." He looked around for a weapon. His sword was at the bottom of the ocean. He grabbed a heavy iron stoker from the fireplace. It was crude, a bludgeon, but it had weight. They burst out into the spiral staircase. The situation here was worse. The silence wasn't just coming from outside, it was bleeding through the walls. The stone masonry was sweating violet oil, and the sounds. The tower was filled with the echoes of the past. Kaelen heard the screams of the sailors from the frozen harbor below. He heard the clash of steel from Oakhaven. It was a psychic assault. Elara clamped her hands over her ears. "It's too loud," she cried. "They are all screaming." Kaelen pushed her forward. "Don't listen. Listen to my boots. Step, step, step." He forced a rhythm. The architect ran ahead, his robes fluttering, sliding down the banister with unnatural agility. For a man of science, he moved like a spider. They reached the level of the library. The doors were blown open. Inside, the books were flying off the shelves, swirling in a vortex of paper. But it wasn't wind, it was gravity failing. The silence was rewriting the laws of physics. Kaelen saw a massive tome float past his head. He ducked. "The containment field is collapsing," the architect shouted. "The core is leaking raw magic." Suddenly, the paper tornado coalesced. The pages stuck together, folding and crunching, forming a shape. A paper golem, 10 feet tall, rustling with the knowledge of 1,000 dead years. It blocked the stairs. It didn't have a face, just a swirling void of text. The paper golem lunged, a fist of encyclopedias slamming into the railing. Kaelen shoved Elara behind him and swung the iron stoker. He hit the creature's arm. It felt like hitting a bag of sand. The impact tore through the paper, scattering pages, but the limb reformed instantly. "Ink and intention," the architect yelled. "Fire! It needs fire!" Kaelen cursed. He had no oil left. He had used it on the boat. "Elara!" Kaelen shouted. "Can you burn it?" Elara peeked out, her face pale. I don't know fire. I only know the push." Kaelen dodged a swipe that would have taken his head off. "Then push it! Push it over the edge!" Elara closed her eyes. She didn't scream this time. She exhaled. A wave of force, visible as a distortion in the air, rippled out from her palms. It wasn't a beam, it was a wall of pressure. It hit the paper golem mid-stride. The creature crumbled, its structural integrity shattered. The mass of paper was blasted backward, over the railing, into the dark void of the central shaft. They watched it fall, disintegrating into a snowstorm of confetti. "Good," Kaelen panted, grabbing her hand. "That was good." He looked at the architect. "How much farther?" "The roots," the architect said, "past the labs, past the prison." They descended past the laboratory levels. Here, the horrors were preserved in glass. Rows of specimens, mutated fish, organs pulsing with light, and things that looked disturbingly human. Kaelen tried not to look, but he saw a jar containing a hand that was tapping on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. The architect didn't even glance at them. "Failures," he muttered. "All failures." Kaelen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. This man had spent centuries trying to conquer death. What had he sacrificed? You didn't just build a tower, Kaelen said, eyeing the rows of abominations. You built a slaughterhouse. They reached the prison level. The cells were open. They had been open for a long time. The bars were rusted through. But in the center of the room stood a construct that wasn't rusted. It was sleek, made of polished chrome and porcelain. It looked like a doll, a marionette without strings. It stood perfectly still, holding a long, thin needle in each hand. The architect stopped. "The nurse," he whispered. "I thought I deactivated her." The construct's head snapped toward them. It rotated 180 degrees. Its face was a smooth porcelain mask with a painted smile that was peeling away to reveal gears beneath. "She doesn't know us," the architect said, his voice trembling. "She only knows that patients must be sedated." The nurse construct moved. It didn't walk. It skated, sparks flying from its feet. It closed the distance in a blur. Kaelen stepped up, swinging the iron stoker. He aimed for the head. The nurse ducked with impossible speed, and the needle in its right hand flashed toward Kaelen's neck. He twisted, the needle tearing a shallow gash in his shoulder. He grunted, kicking the construct in the chest. It slid back, gears whirring angrily. "Deactivate it," Kaelen yelled at the architect. "I can't. The command codes are overwritten by the silence." The nurse reset its stance, raising both needles. Kaelen was bleeding. He was tired. He had a heavy metal stick against a precision-killing machine. He needed an edge. He looked at the open cells. The doors were heavy iron. "Elara, get behind the door," he shouted, pointing to the nearest cell. He baited the construct. "Over here, you porcelain nightmare!" The nurse lunged. Kaelen waited until the last second, then dropped to the floor. The construct flew over him, carried by its momentum, straight into the open cell. Kaelen scrambled up and slammed the iron door shut, throwing the bolt. The construct slammed into the bars, needles sparking, its painted smile now a jagged crack. They left the nurse rattling the bars and hurried down the final flight of stairs. The air grew hot, not humid but dry, oven hot. The smell of ozone and burning oil was overpowering. They were at the bottom, the core. The door was a massive circular vault mechanism, glowing with heat. The architect placed his hand on a panel. Needles pricked his skin, taking a blood sample. "DNA verification," he muttered. The gears of the door groaned, turning slowly. "Welcome," the architect said, "to the heart of the world." The door opened, revealing a cavernous chamber that extended deep into the earth. Suspended in the center of the void was the heart. It was a machine the size of a cathedral. Huge brass gears, some as large as houses, turned in a complex, rhythmic dance. Thump-click, thump-click. In the very center of the mechanism, held in a cage of spinning gyroscopes, was a crystal. It wasn't violet, it was pure white, pulsing with a blinding light. But black veins were creeping up the brass struts supporting it. The corruption had reached the basement. "The resonance chamber is there," the architect pointed to a platform directly under the white crystal. A narrow catwalk led to it over the abyss of grinding gears. She must stand there. She must open her mind to the crystal. It will try to fill her. She must push back. Kaelen didn't like it. It looked like a sacrificial altar. And what happens to her when she pushes back? The architect didn't answer immediately. She becomes a conduit. The energy has to go somewhere. It will vent outward. "Outward," Kaelen grabbed his arm. "You mean it will explode." "It will send a pulse," the architect corrected. "A pulse that resets the local time stream. It will undo the freezing. But the backlash..." "The backlash could kill her," Kaelen finished. He looked at Elara. She was staring at the white crystal entranced. "I hear it," she whispered. "It's singing a lullaby, but it's sad. It wants to sleep." She looked at Kaelen. "I have to do it. The bear, the fog, it won't stop unless I do." Kaelen knelt down. He hated this. He hated magic. He hated destiny. He just wanted to deliver letters. "If it hurts," he said, holding her shoulders, "if it feels like too much, you stop. You hear me? The world isn't worth your life." Elara smiled, a sad, wise smile. "Yes, it is, Kaelen." They walked onto the catwalk. The heat was blistering. Below them, the gears ground on, a machine that didn't care about human lives. Halfway across, the tower shuddered violently. A piece of the ceiling, a slab of stone the size of a wagon, fell. It smashed into a gear train below. Metal screamed. Teeth sheared off. Sparks showered up like fireworks. The catwalk swayed. Kaelen kept his footing, balancing Elara. "Hurry!" the architect yelled. "The structural integrity is at 0. They reached the resonance chamber. It was a circle of copper runes inlaid in the floor. Elara stepped into the center. The white crystal above her pulsed faster. Thump, 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 thump. The hum grew to a roar. Elara threw her head back, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Beams of white light shot from the crystal, connecting to her chest. She was lifted off her feet, floating inches above the copper. Her hair turned white. Her skin began to glow. She wasn't a girl anymore. She was a battery. "It's working!" the architect shouted over the roar. "The frequency is stabilizing. The violet corruption is receding." Kaelen watched the black veins on the brass struts. They were retreating, burning away. But Elara, she was convulsing. The light was too bright. It was burning her. "That's enough!" Kaelen yelled. He moved to pull her out. "No!" The architect pulled a lever. A force field sprang up around the platform, knocking Kaelen back. "She must finish! If we stop now, the energy rebounds and destroys the coast." Kaelen scrambled up, gripping the iron stoker. "Let her go!" The architect laughed, tears streaming down his face. "Don't you see? She is the replacement, my wife. Her soul was lost in the void. But this girl, her vessel is empty enough. I can bring her back. I can swap them." The truth came out. It wasn't about saving the world. It was a necromantic trade. The architect wasn't fixing the machine. He was completing the ritual that broke it in the first place. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He charged the control console. The architect drew a pistol, a strange multi-barreled weapon. He fired. A bolt of plasma scorched the air, hitting Kaelen in the chest plate. The leather smoked, and Kaelen was knocked off his feet, the wind driven from him. He gasped, rolling as a second shot melted the floor where his head had been. The architect wasn't just a builder. He was armed with the weapons of a lost age. "Stay down, Courier. You are witnessing a miracle." Kaelen struggled to breathe. His armor had stopped the bolt from killing him, but his ribs were definitely broken now. He looked at Elara. She was fading. Her eyes were rolling back. The white light was turning violet. The architect was forcing the corruption into her to push her soul out. Kaelen saw the iron stoker lying a few feet away. He couldn't reach the architect. He couldn't break the force field. But he could break the machine. Kaelen grabbed the stoker. He didn't stand up. He spun on his back and threw it. Not at the architect, at the spinning gyroscopes holding the white crystal. The iron bar sailed through the air, end over end. It smashed into the delicate brass rings. Crunch! The sound was sickening. The gyroscope seized. The crystal wobbled, tilting wildly. The beam of light disconnected from Elara. The force field flickered and died. "You fool!" the architect screamed. The crystal, no longer stabilized, began to scream, a high-pitched sonic resonance. Cracks appeared on its surface. The machine began to shake apart. Elara fell from the air, hitting the copper floor hard. Kaelen forced himself up, ignoring the agony in his chest, and sprinted to her. He scooped her up. She was burning hot to the touch, unconscious but alive. "We're leaving!" he shouted. The architect ignored him, running to the wobbling crystal, trying to hold the massive spinning gears with his bare hands. "I can fix it. I just need more time." Kaelen ran for a side door marked Emergency Egress. He didn't know where it went, but it went away from the bomb in the center of the room. They entered a narrow tunnel. Behind them, the sound of the crystal shattering was like a thunderclap. A shockwave of pure energy blasted down the tunnel, knocking Kaelen forward. He shielded Elara as debris rained down. They were in a hangar. A small, vertical shaft led up, and sitting on a launch rail was a vehicle, the Sky Skiff. It was a prototype, open cockpit, canvas wings folded back, a large crystal engine in the rear. Kaelen threw Elara into the front seat and jumped into the pilot's seat behind her. He had never flown anything. He rode horses, but he saw a big red lever. "Please work," he prayed to gods he didn't believe in. He strapped Elara in. He pulled the lever. Nothing happened. The engine sputtered. The shock wave from the core was getting closer. The door behind them was bulging. "Wake up!" Kaelen slammed his fist on the dashboard. "Fly, you pile of junk!" The crystal engine whined. It needed a spark, a jump start. Kaelen looked at Elara. She was glowing faintly, the residual energy. He grabbed her hand and slammed it onto the crystal interface on the dash. "Give it to the machine, Elara." The contact sparked. The engine roared to life, a blue flame shooting out the back. The launch clamps disengaged. The sky skiff shot up the vertical shaft like a bullet. The G-force pressed Kaelen into his seat. He couldn't breathe. They blurred past levels of the tower, the prison, the labs, the library. Debris hit the hull. Clang. Below them, the fire of the exploding core followed, a rising column of white destruction. They burst out of the top of the tower, shattering the remaining glass of the observatory, and soared into the storm. They were airborne. The skiff's wings unfolded with a snap, catching the wind. The vehicle lurched, then stabilized, gliding on the thermal currents. Kaelen looked down. The architect's tower was gone. It collapsed into the sea, swallowed by a massive whirlpool of steam and white light. The explosion vaporized the violet ice for miles. The silence had been pushed back, burned away by the overload. But at what cost? The architect was dead. The knowledge was lost. And they were adrift in the sky. Kaelen wrestled with the controls. The stick was heavy. The engine sputtered and died. The boost from Elara was temporary. They were gliding now, losing altitude. He looked at the compass. It was spinning aimlessly. He looked at the horizon. To the west, beyond the sea, lay land. But it wasn't green. It was gray and red. The ash wastes, the burned lands. "Out of the ice, into the fire," Kaelen muttered. He banked the skiff toward the coast. Elara stirred. She groaned, holding her head. Kaelen leaned forward. "We're safe," he lied. "We're flying." Elara looked over the side. Her eyes widened. "Kaelen," she whispered. "Look at my hands." Kaelen looked. Her hands were not just glowing, they were translucent. He could see the bone, and veins of white light were pulsing under her skin, matching the rhythm of the destroyed heart. She hadn't just channeled the energy, she had absorbed it. She was becoming something else. The skiff dipped lower, skimming the cloud tops. The ash wastes loomed ahead, a landscape of craters and volcanoes. Kaelen gripped the dead stick. They were going to crash. Maybe not hard, but they were going down. He checked Elara's harness. "Hold on," he said, his voice grim. "This is going to be a rough landing." As they descended toward the smoke, a shadow passed over them. Huge, leathery wings. A dragon? No, something mechanical. A skyship of the Ash Raiders. The hunt wasn't over. It had just changed elevation.